Hi everyone, welcome back to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce and this is a wrap-up video. In this video I'm going to talk about books 59, 61 and 62 that I've read this year. So the first one is Things I Don't Know by Meredith Badger, which I picked up on a whim because it was cheap on Booktopia, and when I read the synopsis I was like, that sounds like the most lesbian novel ever. And I was sort of right. It's about this girl called Lenny, and Lenny's friend Anya decides to start a kissing competition with her and their other friend Sophie. And whoever can kiss a boy first wins, essentially. And Lenny thinks that this is kind of stupid, but goes along with this idea. And then there is a new girl at her school called Jo, who she gets paired up with for a project and kind of makes fast friends with. There's a lot going on in this novel. There's Lenny and Jo and their school project. There is the socioeconomic differences between Jo's mothers and Lenny's parents, who own a pie shop. There's a little bit of antagonism happening with Lenny's grandmother coming to stay, and Lenny's grandmother is very critical of everything Lenny does in her life. Meanwhile, Lenny's brother is the golden child. And then there's Adam, who is Lenny's friend and teammate on the running team, who has recently started to act kind of strange around her. So all of this is going on. Because of Anya's kissing competition, Lenny ends up kissing both Adam and Jo. And Jo has a boyfriend, so she's not kind of, you know, wanting to do anything. And that's fine. And Lenny is kind of confused because she's kissed Adam and she's kissed Jo, and she possibly liked kissing Jo a little bit more, but she's not sure about it. And most of the conflicts introduced in this novel are wrapped up by the end, except that one, which is actually kind of brilliant, because you don't always figure out your sexuality by the end of the book. When you're 14, you don't have to. It's okay to question it. And what I loved so much about this book is that it really was just about the initial stage of questioning. It wasn't about finding the answer. It wasn't about needing to find the answer. No one pressured her into labeling herself. And that was great. Like, it was fine for her to just to be wondering about this, and no one expected her to know for sure. And I think that's a really important message to send, especially to the demographic of this book, because they are so young. They've only just started high school, and it's just really, really important to have more books like this, I think, where it is just about saying, hey, maybe you like boys, or maybe you like girls, maybe you like both. It's fine. You know, you don't have to have the answer right away. It's okay to take a while to get there. It's even okay if, like Jo's mother, you don't realize until you're grown up. It's all fine. You know, just take your time and get there when you get there. And I'm just so glad that I gave this book a chance, because I think it is really, really important, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's fabulous. The next book I'm going to talk about is Marleys Ghost by David Levithan and illustrated by Brian Selznick, which is a modernized retelling of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, but instead of being set on Christmas, it is set on Valentine's Day. There's a kid called Ben, and his girlfriend Marley recently died from leukemia, and so he has given up on love, and he thinks love is stupid and pointless and that nothing good can ever come of it, and is basically just being a grump and bringing down everyone's good feelings about Valentine's Day. And so he is visited first by the ghost of Marley and then the ghosts of Valentine's Day, past, present, future, and obviously, you know, realizes the error of his ways and learns to love again, you know, like happens in A Christmas Carol. This was pretty good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was really sweet, and 2 of the side characters were a gay couple, and they were just super, super adorable. But something that I had some problems with was that some of the lines were taken verbatim from A Christmas Carol, so even though it is set in modern times, there was a very, very, you know, old-fashioned feel to the language, and it didn't really feel like it fit all the time. It was mostly when Ben was talking to the spirits that it would happen. The spirits, I can understand, would have a kind of old-fashioned way of speaking, but I didn't think it fit that Ben imitated that. I understand that he did it in order to keep it as close to the source text as possible, but every time it happened, it just kind of pulled me out of the story, and it took, you know, a couple of paragraphs to get back in again. So yeah, but that's just a personal thing. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend picking it up because it is quite cute. The last book I'm going to talk about in this video is The Marvels by Brian Selznick. This is essentially two stories. The first one is told in pictures, and then the second one is told in words, and then there's like an epilogue in pictures again. So the first story tells of the Marvel family, which starts with a boy who survived a shipwreck. And prior to the shipwreck, he'd been performing with his brother in a play on deck, and then a storm came, and the ship sank, and he and his brother were the only survivors, but his brother, and their dog, but his brother died soon after. He washed up on an island, buried his brother, and accidentally started a fire, but that was actually good because it acted as a beacon, and a ship came and got him. He then went to London, where he started building the Royal Theatre, and then one day a baby was left at the back door of the theatre, and the boy, Billy Marvel, his name was, raised the child as his own, and that kind of set off a dynasty of famous actors of this theatre called the Marvels. And it goes through a couple of generations of those until the last one, when the Royal Theatre catches on fire and there's kind of an uncertain end. And then the second story is about a boy called Joseph Jervis, who runs away to London to live with his uncle Albert Nightingale, who he doesn't know very much about except this address. And he gets there, and Uncle Albert's house is kind of very strange. It is all set out a very certain way, and it sounds like there are a bunch of people in there, but it's just Albert living there, and it's just really confusing, and Albert refuses to explain anything and keeps threatening to send Joseph home. Meanwhile, Joseph is trying to look for his friend Blink, who they ran away from school together, and then Blink disappeared, and Joseph doesn't know where he is. And we find out more about the house and about Albert himself, and it's actually really, really sad. I cried a lot in this book, mostly during the first part because it was so beautiful, but then I just sobbed for ages after finishing the second part because it just, God. It's set in the 80s amidst the AIDS crisis. Also, Joseph makes friends with a little girl called Frankie, whose brother also died under mysterious circumstances, and Albert won't talk about that, and he won't talk about the house, and he just won't really explain anything. So Joseph tries to find the clues for himself, which is mostly a good thing, but doesn't always, you know, make Albert happy. And then just, yeah, and then the epilogue kind of ties up all the loose ends that we were left with at the end of the second story, and I cried again a lot. I don't really want to go into much more detail about it than that because it will spoil it, but yes, definitely pick this book up because it is just a marvel. If you'll excuse the pun, it's magnificent, and I just cannot praise this book highly enough. Also, the fact that it has openly gay characters and it is a middle grade novel is super, super important. But yes, definitely pick this up. Okay, so those are all the books that I'm going to talk about in this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, everyone.